Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are diving into a topic that is absolutely essential for any family navigating the journey of international adoption,
Right.
getting your documents authenticated through a process called the Apostille.
That's right. And it sounds complicated, maybe, but it's crucial. We've got a valuable stack of material here, key insights from a video excerpt and a really detailed article that breaks down what this is, exactly why it's so important in the adoption context, and, how it actually works. We'll look specifically at Massachusetts and touch on New Hampshire, too.
Right. Our mission today is really to unpack these sources for you, highlight the most critical steps, pinpoint those common pitfalls that can cause, well, really frustrating delays,
Definitely.
and give you the essential knowledge you need to keep this part of the process moving smoothly if international adoption is on your path.
Think of this as your shortcut, sort of to understanding the core requirements and maybe avoiding some headaches pulled directly from these sources. We're going to guide you through what matters most.
Okay, let's jump in then. So first things first, the absolute core concept. What is an apostille when we're talking about adoption documents?
Well, at its heart, international adoption relies on documents from one country, let's say,
Right.
the U.S. being accepted as legitimate and legally valid by the government of another country.
And you can't just send over a standard copy and hope for the best, right?
Exactly. No,
Okay.
definitely not. That's where the apostille comes in. It's a specific type of certification, stamp and seal, really, that makes a U.S. document legally recognized in a foreign country. Now, this particular process is used when the destination country is part of the Hague Apostille Convention.
The Hague Convention. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that big international agreement designed to simplify recognizing documents between member countries. So the apostille is the mechanism they actually use for that.
Precisely. And the sources make it crystal clear why this matters so profoundly in adoption. Foreign governments, they require apostilles on key documents simply to prove they are authentic. If your documents aren't properly authenticated with an apostille, well, they just won't be recognized abroad.
Wow. And I imagine that stops everything cold. The whole process just grinds to a halt.
It really can. It can cause critical, sometimes heartbreaking delays in bringing a child home. Both sources we looked at really drive home that proper authentication isn't just, bureaucratic red tape. It's absolutely essential for a smooth and timely process. It's the key, really, to ensuring your legal steps here in the U.S. are actually valid where they need to be.
Okay, that makes the why very, very clear. It's about international legal validity, specifically within that Hague framework. So, okay, what kind of documents are we typically talking about? What actually needs this critical certification stamp?
Yeah, good question. The Massachusetts source gives a great list, kind of a rundown, of the types of documents you'll most likely encounter needing an apostille for adoption. These include documents specific to the process itself, like your official home study report.
Right, that's fundamental. Can't proceed without that.
Exactly. Also, the license for your adoption agency, that needs to be proven valid, and crucial court documents like the final court adoption order or any guardianship papers.
Okay, so the documents proving the legal relationship and the agency's legitimacy. That makes sense.
Exactly. But it's not just adoption-specific papers. You'll probably also need standard vital records like your birth certificates and marriage certificates authenticated.
Huh. So personal family records, too. Okay.
Yeah. And potentially other documents related to the legal steps or, individuals involved. Things like power of attorney forms, if maybe a guardian or legal representative is acting on your behalf, or perhaps parental consent letters, depending very much on the specific situation and the country.
Wow, that's quite a collection of documents, potentially.
Yeah, it certainly can be. And here's a really crucial point the sources stress. The exact list, the one you actually need, is determined entirely by the foreign country's specific legal requirements. You absolutely must check directly with your adoption agency or your immigration attorney to get the definitive list needed for your specific case. Don't just assume.
That's vital advice. Don't assume the list from one country applies somewhere else. Get the specific list for your situation. Okay, so once you know which documents need an apostille, how do you actually, go about getting one? Let's walk through the practical steps, maybe using Massachusetts as our detailed example like the article does.
Okay, let's unpack this process. Step one is perhaps the most common pitfall if you're not aware of it. Determine the state of origin. The absolute critical rule that seems to trip people up is that documents must be apostilled in the same state where they were originally issued or where they were notarized. A Massachusetts apostille is only for documents originating in Massachusetts. If your marriage certificate is from New York, it needs a New York apostille, period.
That makes total sense when you pause to think about it, right? The state is certifying its own document, but I can totally see someone in a rush gathering everything up and just sending it all to their current state's office.
Oh, it happens all the time, apparently, and it just causes immediate rejection and delay. The sources also mention, importantly, that federal documents, things like FDI background checks, they need the apostille from the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C., not a state office.
Got it. Okay. State docs stay with the state they came from. Federal docs go federal. What's the next step after figuring out where to send it?
Step 2. Get documents notarized, but only if applicable. Not every single document needs this, but certain forms like declarations, maybe affidavits, or those power of attorney forms that you signed yourself, they often require notarization before they can even be submitted for an apostille. And you need to make absolutely sure the notary is currently active, their signature and stamp are clear and legible.
Okay, so some of those personal declarations or signed forms need that extra notary step first. Check the requirements.
Right. Step 3 is super crucial. Gather certified copies. And this isn't just a suggestion, it's a hard requirement for vital records, birth, marriage, death certificates, and court documents. You absolutely need certified originals or copies that have been officially stamped and validated by the issuing court or the vital record agency. Plain photocopies will be rejected, guaranteed. No wiggle room there.
Okay, no photocopies. Got it. Certified or original only. So we figured out the right state, got documents notarized if they needed it, and we have the proper certified originals. Then it's actually time to submit.
That's step 4. Submit everything to the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office or the equivalent Secretary of State office in the state where the documents originated. For Massachusetts, the source says you can send them by mail or you can deliver them in person. You need to include the correct apostille request form and really make sure the destination country is clearly listed on it, plus the required fee, and importantly, a prepaid return envelope so they can actually send your documents back to you.
Right. They won't cover the postage home. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And finally, step 5.
Step 5. Review the apostille certificate itself. Once you get your documents back with that certificate attached, it's usually stapled or bound to the document. Take a moment. Don't just file it away. Check it carefully. Double check that your destination country is listed correctly and that all the key information on the document and the certificate matches up. Spelling is correct. Dates look right. A typo here could still potentially cause issues abroad.
Wow. It's fascinating how these seemingly small details at each and every stage are just absolutely critical for success.
They really are. Little things can become big problems.
Absolutely. And speaking of critical details and potential issues, let's talk about timelines, fees, and those common mistakes that can really derail things. What kind of time should people realistically budget for this apostille process?
Well, the Massachusetts source indicates a standard processing time of about 1 to 3 business days once the office receives your documents. So that's their turnaround time. But that's on top of mailing time, both sending it to them and getting it back.
Right. So realistically, depending on where you live and mailing speeds, it's probably closer to a week, maybe more for the whole round trip.
Exactly. That's a safer bet. And for urgent adoption timelines, which are pretty common, expedited services are often available and, frankly, highly recommended or sometimes even necessary. The fees in Massachusetts are generally quite reasonable, typically ranging from about $6 to $20 per document for the state fee itself. Of course, there might be additional service fees if you use a third-party service to help.
Okay, so the fee itself isn't usually the major hurdle. It sounds like the potential for delays is the bigger concern, especially with adoption. What are the absolute most common mistakes people make that cause those critical delays? The ones the sources flag.
Yeah, the sources list several, and they really just reinforce the points we just covered. Top of the list, maybe number 1, is using photocopies instead of certified originals or properly court-stamped copies. That's just an automatic rejection right there.
Got it. Certified or original only? No shortcuts?
Another major one is forgetting the notarization step on documents where it's actually required, like certain declarations or affidavits. You really have to check the specific foreign country's requirements and understand the nature of the document itself.
So double-checking those document types and their specific needs is vital, don't assume.
Absolutely. And as we emphasized before, submitting out-of-state documents to the wrong state's office. That state of origin rule is paramount and seems to catch a lot of people. Also, simple things like incorrect or missing fees will cause delays, as will forgetting to list the country of destination on the request form you apostille has to be specific to the country you're sending it to.
It really sounds like these are often, administrative errors, things you might overlook when you're stressed or rushed, rather than super complex legal issues. But they have massive consequences for the timeline.
Precisely. And in international adoption, where you're often working against foreign government timelines, embassy appointments, travel plans, these seemingly small errors can lead to incredibly stressful and potentially costly delays.
That's really where getting some help can make a real difference, isn't it? The sources actually talk about options for assistance and even share a real-world story, I think.
They do, yeah. There's a story mentioned about a family in Newton, Massachusetts, who were facing a really tight deadline for an adoption in Ukraine. They needed, I think it was 6 documents, apostilled, and physically back in their hands within 72 hours for a critical embassy appointment.
Wow, 72 hours is incredibly fast for this kind of government process. That sounds almost impossible.
It is extremely fast. And the story highlights how they sought assistance, professional assistance, to navigate the requirements under that pressure. This help included things like verifying the notary and court seals were correct beforehand, preparing a certified cover letter for the submission package, and then physically walking the paperwork into the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office in Boston for a same-day apostille service.
So that hands-on assistance actually going in person sounds like it was absolutely critical under that kind of pressure.
It clearly was in their case. The story details how, with that help, they managed to get everything processed and returned within 48 hours, successfully meeting their 72-hour deadline, and, most importantly, keeping their adoption process firmly on track. That story really brings home the practical value of getting expert help when time is truly of the essence and the stakes are, this high.
Absolutely. So where does one find that kind of specialized help, according to these sources we looked at?
Well, the Massachusetts article specifically mentions a service called the Boston Apostille Service. They're actually located in Tewksbury, MA, which is near Boston. They note that this service is local, licensed, bonded, and insured, which are all good things to look for.
Okay, and what exactly do they offer to help families trying to navigate this?
They apparently offer face-to-face support, which can be reassuring, and transparency in the process. They assist with both state-level apostilles, like we've been discussing for MA, and also federal authentication requirements, like for those FBI checks. Their services listed include apostille services, naturally, but also MA Notary public services for documents that need that first step. Translation services, which can also be crucial for international documents, and federal authentications. They specifically mention helping families with international adoptions, coordinating with agencies, and handling the submissions.
Okay, so they can potentially handle multiple aspects of the complex documentation needed for adoption, not just the apostille itself.
Based on the description in the source, yes, it seems that way. The article also points out something useful. While the MA State Office, as we said, only handles MA documents, a service like theirs can often help you get apostilles from all 50 states. They can act as a coordinator if you happen to have documents originating from multiple states, which isn't uncommon.
That could be a huge help.
Definitely. They provide contact information in the source. The phone number is 978-424-4629. And they also mentioned an online application is available on their website.
In the video excerpt, we had mentioned New Hampshire as well, right?
He did, yes. The video confirms that the apostille step is just as crucial for residents of New Hampshire involved in international adoption. It provides a specific website, newhampshireapostilleservices.com, and interestingly, the same phone number, 978-424-4629, for assistance with documentation needs specific to NH residents. So it looks like resources are available for families in both these states and potentially coordinated across the country through services like this.
That's really reassuring to know there are services specifically designed to help navigate this complexity. Before we wrap up, are there any other sort of practical details from the FAQ section of the sources that are worth noting for our listeners?
Yes, just a couple of final quick points. The MA article reconfirms, yet again, because it's so important, that Massachusetts state offices absolutely cannot apostille documents issued by a different state. It's worth repeating that critical rule one last time.
Absolutely. Hammer that home. State of origin is key.
They also confirm they can mail documents back using various common carriers like FedEx, UPS, and the regular post office. And that to get an accurate quote for shipping, you'd naturally need to provide your name, address, and telephone number.
Standard shipping logistics. Got it.
Yes. And finally, concerning FBI background checks, which, as we mentioned, are very common for adoption, They clarify that they provide the apostille for these federal reports, but you have to obtain the actual FBI report yourself first. They suggest finding approved FBI channelers to get the report processed efficiently before you bring it for apostille.
Right, that's an important distinction. They certify the report you provide them. They don't actually go and get the FBI report for you.
Exactly. They handle the authentication side once you have the document.
Okay, so we've taken a real deep dive into the apostille process, focusing specifically on international adoption documents and pulling directly from these informative sources. It seems really clear this isn't merely paperwork or red tape. It's a truly vital authentication step that ensures your family's legal journey is recognized and accepted internationally.
Absolutely. And understanding the specific documents required for your case, that critical state of origin rule, the absolute need for certified copies, and being aware of those common mistakes like using photocopies or forgetting notarization, that knowledge is truly key to avoiding stressful and potentially devastating delays in a very sensitive process.
And knowing that there are specialized services available that help exist to navigate this complexity, maybe coordinating with agencies, handling submissions correctly, and working under tight deadlines if needed, that can make a profound difference, as we saw with that Ukraine adoption example we talked about. I think this deep dive really shows that while all this paperwork can seem daunting at first glance, breaking it down, understanding the why behind each step, and knowing where to potentially get help makes it much more manageable.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
And, this raises an interesting, maybe broader question to think about. Here's something maybe to consider based on everything we've covered. How does a seemingly small, rather technical requirement like an apostille actually highlight the broader challenges and maybe the essential need for countries around the world to agree on ways to standardize legal processes, especially when something as fundamental and universal as forming a family crosses international borders in our connected world?
That's a really powerful thought to leave with you. It certainly makes you appreciate the intricate global systems needed even for the most personal of journeys. Something to ponder indeed.